All right, today we are doing the fifth cycle, which is the Sinister Moto cycle, the Web Warrior cycle, Spider-Man cycle, whatever you want to call it. I'm really excited for this. This is probably one of my favorite cycles overall, and we're going to go through each of these heroes and talk about my personal favorite aspect for them. Two important notes, as we've always stated in the past. This is from a solo player's lens, and this is my favorite aspect, not necessarily the best aspect for them. We're also not going to do this in order of release date. We're going to do Web Warriors first and then Champions, because I kind of treat them differently with a lot of things. If you want to watch the old videos, I will put them in the corner for you all. So let's get right into it. Let's start with Ghost Spider and Gwen Stacy. She came out with a protection kit, and it made the most sense because a lot of our cards do some pretty cool stuff. After you use a basic power like defend, deal 6 damage to an enemy, which is really cool that you could do that. Phantom Flip allowed you to remove 5 threat from the scheme, 2 for 5, which is kind of a really good combo that you got going on, right? George Stacy allows you to take those events and store them on him, right? Exhaust George Stacy, attach 1 event from your hand face down here, which is a crazy good card that's a regular action and not alter ego. So you can save up these cards for later on. The problem is, I feel like she is so good, right? So good at protection that I don't want to play her anything else. And again, when you use a card that has interrupt or response, after you resolve an interrupt or response, my apologies, ability on an event, ready Ghost Spider. And that's basically like the majority of her things are responses and interrupts, right? So you guys are ready or up. She's so good. She's so good, but she's so good in protection. I feel like that's the weak link with her, is that I don't want to do like anything else with her. I don't want to use any aspect. I've tried a few. I always fall back on protection and do kind of a perfect protection build. But yeah, that's kind of what I do with her. On the flip side, we have Miles Morales, who his kit is so self-contained and balanced that I could play any aspect with him and do fine. I personally like leadership and aggression with him. I think it really leans into what he's doing well. But because of his whole Venom Blast and Spider Camouflage ability, he can do a lot there. Especially against a steady villain where you can keep them stunned and confused, like keep those status tokens on there. This becomes a 1 for 8 card for damage, which is absolutely nuts. Web Shot, Swing In, all great cards allow you to activate the Venom Blast and Spider Camouflage, which can confuse and stun your enemy. His kit is so self-contained good that, like I said, it doesn't matter. I guess aggression or leadership is what I would pick for him. When he came out, they did this whole shield thing, which I get they had to do it with someone, but it never made sense to me with that. But in general, his stuff is so good. Now, with Spider-Ham, his kit is also really good. And the problem with Spider-Ham is when he started coming out, the basic cards started getting really good. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But I play Spider-Ham in leadership solely for this card, Clarity of Purpose. Clarity of Purpose allows you to exhaust this card and deal 1 damage to the attached character. Now, why is that important? Because when Spider-Ham takes any amount of damage, you place 1 toon counter on. Toon counters can be spent as resources unlimited amounts of time, which is way too much. And you also generate a wild resource on top of it. So it's a way of generating essentially 2 resources. His cards are really good. He still has the ability to confuse with Swinging Web Pig, which is a pretty strong card. His Mallet's pretty good. His Organic Webbing is pretty good. Where the hammer allows you to remove 1 tomb counter so that he gets +2 attack, which puts him up to, I think, 4 attack, right? Because he gets +1 with this. He can get really strong, and you put this up with a card that allows him to easily ready himself. He's nuts. He's a nuts hero, and we'll get more into this in a little bit with basic cards, but I play him leadership solely for clarity of purpose. The rest is done through basic cards. Now we have Spider, who, again, they did protection with Spider too, which was an interesting design choice. I like it. I like the cards that came with Spider. I like her in aggression, to be honest. And the reason being is because she has so much health with 14 that I felt like I don't need to do defensive basic stuff. And now, again, protection is much more than just defending nowadays. It's a pretty interesting aspect overall. But again, her kit is so good with how she works and being able to generate resources. You just get some high damage cards from aggression and whatnot in your hand, and she works really well. She's a really, 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 really good kit. So my favorite with her is aggression. But you could do other things too. But I feel like she just needs that extra oomph with attack, and I could just plow through everyone. So that's why we need to talk about the basic cards, because I allude to that with a lot of these heroes. We got to talk about the basic cards. Web of Life and Destiny is a perfect example. So if it's a Web Warrior hero, you don't need to pay the cost, which is, I feel like, a mistake. And then after a Web Warrior ally leaves play, there's a ton of good ones. We're not going to go through all of them, but there are a ton of good ones. Choose a player. That player draws a card, right? That's a really cheap card draw, and you should be getting your allies out constantly. For example, Spider-Man Hobby Brown should be an auto include every single time, because when he leaves play, you discard the top 3 cards of the encounter deck, and you can deal damage to the villain equal to the number of boost icons discarded this way. A lot of the harder villains, it's like the average boost icons like 2.6 or something like that, or like 2.4. Let's just say 2.5, right? That's essentially, you should end up with 7 damage from him getting knocked out. That's crazy. That's crazy amounts of damage. Then you can add card draw on top of it. Insane. Now, they also have cards like Across the Spider-Verse, which is, it works okay for solo, but it is a better multiplayer card, I think. Exhaust a Web Warrior card you control after paying the 2 costs. Search your discard pile for a Web Warrior ally and put it into play. Then choose a player. That player may spend 3 resources of any type to repeat this ability, right? You also have heroes like Silk, who's a protection hero. I didn't get into Peter Parker Spider-Man, which I probably should have. I could bring that up in a second. But Silk, after you play Silk from your hand, if you control another Web Warrior card, search the encounter deck for a treachery and discard it. Right, there are some crazy treacheries out there, so the fact that you can do that is kind of nuts. Oops, that's not the one we want. But one of the other things I will bring up really fast is Spider-Man Peter Parker. Again, his requirements you can get around with a leadership deck, which makes leadership kind of stronger than most other things, basic leadership. And after Spider-Man attacks or thwarts, choose another Web Warrior character to ready that character, which is nuts. It's nuts that you get such an easy refresh ability, essentially, especially if you use Make the Call or anything like that. He's a really strong hero, or a really strong ally, I should say. I know they tried to make it hard with the whole, while paying for this card, spend the list of resources, but I'm going to guess at some point they're going to fix the Make the Call glitch, because for Make the Call, you'll need to do this. So we'll see. Now, that's all the Web Warrior stuff. Then we get into Nova and Ironheart. I love both these heroes. I didn't think I would like Nova as much as I do, but Nova is pretty sweet and is a lot better than I thought he would be. The problem with these heroes, it's the same exact problem as the Web Warriors. The basic cards are too strong for them. Now, Nova, what I found is I don't care what aspect I play him. I really don't. I've been playing him more Justice recently, but I don't need to. And again, it's because his kit is so strong, right? Pot Shot is such an easy card to pay for with a 1 wild resource to deal 4 damage, right? 1 for 4 is pretty easy. 1 for 3 threat removal is pretty easy, right? Where is it? His connection to the World Mind doesn't count as your hand size, which is kind of huge. His helmet gets you that wild resource right out of the gate, right? Really, really fast. I feel like I can do constant damage with him. And especially when you get Miss Marvel out there, so after you play an event, exhaust Miss Marvel, deal 1 damage to her, return that event to your hand. Which is kind of nuts, right? Like, I could just keep playing the same events over and over, at least for 3 times. So, again, you can make the argument that leadership to buff up Miss Marvel would be really helpful. I get that. But just generally speaking, he's so strong. And Force Field Projection is a good, strong card, too. He can just generate so much resource and do it very quickly. So, I like him in Justice to get a lot of the cheaper Justice cards out there that remove thwart off of things. Aggression works well, leadership works well, but we'll get into basic in a second. Really works well for him. Now, Ironheart, once you get to version 3, you're pretty much golden, because this is broken right down here, maximum efficiency. Remove 1 progress counter from Ironheart, you deal 2 damage. To get progress counters on her, it's basically different cards will do it, right? You remove 3 different scheme, place a progress counter. 2 if you remove the last one. So 2 for 3 isn't anything great. 2 for 4 damage isn't anything great, but the progress counters is where it's all like kind of really strong. And even from the 2 to 3 status, remove 6 progress counters here. Ready her, give her tough status, and swap her to version 3. Obviously very strong. All this stuff is strong stuff. Stroke of Genius, strong card. These are the 2 probably broken cards that you get 2 extra hit points, which is good. You exhaust this. It's a hero action, not an attack, to deal damage to an enemy equal to Ironheart's version. So every single turn, even if you're stunned, you can exhaust this card to deal 3 damage if you're on version 3. On the flip side, Propulsion Jets, again, 2 costs, get you 2 more hit points. That brings up to 14 hit points. Exhaust this to remove threat. And it's not a thwarting action, it's just a hero action. To remove threat from a scheme equal to Ironheart's version number, you should be doing 3 damage and 3 threat removal every single turn without even trying. These 2 cards kind of break her, and her special ability is way too strong. It's way too strong. So I like her as aggression, mainly because of pitchback. It's really easy to get her with aerial, with Ironheart. Or with Nova, it's easy too. But I like her with pitchback. I think it works pretty well. I've used her a lot with Dive Bomb, which I think is a fun card to use with her because it's just fun to do massive amounts of attack. But I was going to talk about the basic cards, right? The basic cards are important. Go for Champions. The most broken card in the game. Play only if your identity has a champion trait. Each champion character in play cannot take damage until the end of the round. So you can just keep getting punched in the face over and over and over by the villain, and it does not matter. You will not take any damage. Just a 3-cost event. That's not too bad. Ingenuity was a great card. This I'm not even that upset about, but it is a really nice mental resource generator. You can play the genius trait, which there are older heroes like Wasp, who I love this card for, by the way, and Tony Stark, I believe. But it's a 2-cost upgrade. Ingenuity, you can exhaust it to generate a resource. Fantastic card. Champions Mobile Bunker, get into your cards faster, right? Exhaust this to choose an identity with a champion trait. The player who controls that identity may draw 2 cards, and then you have to discard 2 cards, right? Great way. And then finally, Moon Girl came out in this time. 3/2/2, 2 consequential damage and 3 life, which doesn't seem that great, but after you play Moon Girl from your hand, draw 1 card for each resource used to pay for her. Now, they have nerfed her a little bit because you used to be able to throw away like 4 or 5 cards with mental resources to draw a bunch more cards. They said that's not what you're supposed to do. I don't know. I don't think it's that big of an advantage, but still, you could play her and then draw back the cards in which you played her, which can make her essentially a free card to put out there, which is kind of insane. So again, when I play Ironheart and Nova, I'm looking at basic cards first and foremost. And that's kind of everything from this cycle. It was a very strong cycle, a very powerful cycle, and probably a little bit broken. Basic was already getting strong at this point. I think this cycle broke basic. I think it made it too strong and too good, unfortunately. I still love it. I still love pretty much all the heroes in this cycle. I still think a lot of them were geared toward the solo player, and I'll probably do a video on this at some point in the future, is that the vast majority of these heroes, I think, are meant for solo play, because the X-Men were not, and we'll get into that next time. But we're not going to do another video of this for a little bit, because the next cycle we have left is Mutant Genesis. And I gotta wait for the last 2 heroes. We gotta wait for the last 2 heroes to come out. So anyway, before we go, do me a huge favor, like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Let me know your favorite aspect for playing each of these heroes. And yeah, I'll see you all next time.